Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, that's right, it's time for Clash of the Classics. Chris, this is one of my favorite times in Horsepower for an Hour. We get a chance to stroll down memory lane, have a look at some of the old stuff. One of the cool things about just about any classic car is the uniqueness. You know, anymore today, it seems like one car looks like the next car, which looks like the next car. Everything looks the same. The cool part about the classics is that everything had its own distinctive look, its own distinctive styling. At one glance, you knew exactly you were looking at a Pontiac, a Ford, a GTO, whatever it happened to might be. Today, everything has changed. Would you agree?
Yeah, now why do you think that is?
Because I believe that today it's all money driven as opposed to inspiration, as opposed to creative inspiring. And if it works for Honda, well, then we'll chase Honda. And so now all of a sudden one automaker becomes fearful to step out and to try something different for fear that it won't work. If we try something that's unique and odd and it flops, well, now we have hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, who knows how much in production that goes down the drain. A perfect example of that would be Plymouth's the Prowler, that PT Cruiser and Prowler edition they had.
I enjoyed that.
The PT Cruiser went pretty well. The Prowler flopped.
I loved the Prowler. Cruiser I wasn't crazy about.
Correct.
Funny enough.
And I agree. I liked the Prowler as well, but it just, in terms of raw numbers and sales, it never made it. And so there was a huge failure in terms of production, in terms of anticipation, in terms of production money, and it was just difficult.
So they've kind of gone the one-size-fits-all route.
Yeah, because if it works for you, then it'll work for me. And now there's a certain safety in that.
Well, I guess that's debatable, but okay.
But if you're new to the show, perhaps this is the first time you're tuning us in, you're going to find every week we roll the clock back. We pit two classic models against one another. We talk about interior, exterior. We look at styling. We talk about the engine, transmission, whatever kind of suits our fancy. We have a good time doing it, and then we vote on the car that we like best here in studio. And as always, we welcome you to right here on our YouTube channel or on our website, horsepoweronline.com. Let us know which car you like best. These battles are fueled by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply put, the ATRA. Go to atra.com. There you'll find a host of transmission shops in your area that are ready and capable of servicing your transmission needs. Today, the showdown is between the 1964 Plymouth Sport Fury and the 1964 Pontiac GTO. I want to start with that Plymouth. Interesting story here with this car. Back in 63, Mopar kind of found themselves with quite a few unhappy buyers, I guess you could say. They bought the 426 wedge engine option and then tried to use it for daily drivers. Mopar made it pretty clear back then that this engine was for competition only, but folks still seem to think that it would make for a good day-to-day driver. Didn't work out real well for him, so in 64, Plymouth decided to give those same people who were unhappy with the drivability on a day-to-day basis, gave them a revised version and called it the 426 Street Wedge. Now, unlike the Max Wedge, Mopar went with a 10-to-1 compression so they could run something less than, let's just say, aviation fuel in the car. And then instead of the big dual quad setup, Chrysler offered it with a far more mild single four-barrel on a conventional cast iron intake manifold, and then they had the more traditional exhaust system rather than those big ram heads, that ram head design that they used on the earlier models. Pretty good job of detuning. They definitely didn't, I guess you could say, defang it. They didn't take all of it out, but still running a competition cam, competition pistons, had big heavy valve springs. Not too sure on the lift specs, but it was tamed down quite a bit. The idle was far more reasonable, but still allowed for some pretty decent acceleration. Like the look of the car, definitely has a sleeper look to it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a cooler name with Street Wedge. Obviously, the exterior is fantastic. I really like the instrument panel That interior dash just looks fantastic.
Yeah, I liked it as well. And then 2 transmission options were available, either the 4-speed manual, which was kind of odd for back in 1964, and then the Torque Flight, the 727, which was a beast for sure. All of our automatic transmission listeners in the ATRA network will definitely, in a moment's notice, agree that that Torque Flight 727, one of the best, most reliable automatic transmissions ever designed. Motor Trend tested this car in 1964 and wrote these words. This is a quote. "All in all, it's as good as they come in overall performance. Genuine muscle with livable manners." That's an end quote. I would have to say that's probably a pretty good summation of this car. Everything about this car, and I'm not always a big, huge mid-60s Mopar fan. This one makes it.
A bit heavy, though, at 3,720 pounds.
But again, they're going to talk about mid-60s, and this is a mid-sized car, so I understand what you're saying, but this was all iron, didn't have some of the manufacturing refinements that we have today.
That's true.
So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But now also in 64, they weren't really too concerned about gas. But listen to this, 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds, 15.2 seconds through the quarter mile. The MSRP originally $3,880. Take a wild guess what this car's worth today.
That's almost $1 per pound. Today, I'm going to say the bidding starts at about $20,000.
Pretty close. The bidding starts at about $50K.
Oh, that's not close at all. That's more than double.
Want to be easy on you, dude. But before we go any further, I want to talk about the largest automatic transmission network on the planet. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. ATRA makes our Clash of the Classics possible. No one knows transmissions better than ATRA. These guys have got a member network, stretches from coast to coast. There's no better place to be when your car is experiencing a transmission problem than an authorized ATRA service provider. All right, dude, let's talk about that Pontiac. Now, arguably, the big bang in modern muscle evolution is the 64 Pontiac GTO. It's kind of where it all began, a mid-sized car with a big V8. They marketed it as a muscle car. In fact, at least to me, it's the very definition of a muscle car. Biggest engine stuffed into the smallest car is what a muscle car is all about. Get you caught up to speed on some of the early history. Pontiac sidestepped GM's prohibition on having engines bigger than a 330 cubic inch displacement back in those days. GM said, that might be what you're mandating, but we're going to go with a big 389. So in a ploy that didn't require corporate approval, check this out, Pontiac develops that 389 V8. It was a $296 option for the new Pontiac Tempest. It was at that point that the GTO was born, and the funny thing is, Pontiac hoped that they would be able to sell 5,000 units in 1964. By the time 1964 came to a close, these guys had sold 32,450 GTOs, and all of a sudden, my hero, John DeLorean, was considered to be a genius. Everyone knows he went on to become, the founder of the DeLorean Motor Company, and he definitely was a genius. But as you know, even though the GTO has long been discontinued, except for that one poor attempt that GM had back in, I think it was in 2004, to revive this car, GTO's got almost a cult-like following. It kind of reminds me of the folks who are just completely and totally engrossed in the 56 Ford F-150 or F-100 pickup. That's kind of that loyalty. That's kind of what the GTO reminds me of.
Yeah, but at least in my opinion, that cult following, that fandom, the fanaticism of the GTO did not continue. In 04, you said it was?
Oh, yeah. They
I don't
missed
know
the mark.
what they were thinking on that one.
Definitely missed a mark on that one.
But at least in 64, they did manage to make this quite a bit lighter than the Plymouth by almost 300 pounds.
Good-looking car, too. Four-barrel GTOs typically ran 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds. They went through the quarter mile at 15 seconds at 93 miles per hour. The tri-power cars, those triple deuces, were consistently faster, and at least to me added quite a bit of mystique when you open the hood. Original MSRP on this car was $2,852. Today, this car starts at about $50,000, but it's nothing to hear of one selling for $80K or more. All right, Chris, it's time now to tell which car do you like here and why.
Kind of depends on the application, because if I'm running it, if I'm racing it, I'm going GTO. If I'm just cruising it and rubbing it with a diaper, as they say in Ferris Bueller, I'm going with the Plymouth. And since I'm more likely to just cruise it around and have it in a garage, I'm gonna go Plymouth. I
Okay,
like the front and back end better than the GTO.
All right, folks, we're going to need you to kind of throw the towel in for us here and interrupt this or break this tie for us, because I'm going to roll with the GTO. Even though I do like that Mopar, that GTO to me is one of a kind, and it would be impossible for me to vote against it. So let us know which car you like and why. Today's Clash of the Classics made possible by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply the ATRA, with certified service providers all across America. It is easy to find peace of mind when it comes to transmission service and repair. Next time your car is having a transmission problem, head on over to atra.com to find an authorized transmission service provider near you. That's it, folks. We'll see you next week.
When I was a boy, I thought about